Hey everybody, what's up? It's Dr. John Davidson, the physical therapist with Mash Elite Performance. We've had a lot of people ask some questions about stretching and the different aspects of it, so we want to go ahead and put together this video, just kind of break everything up and explain to you guys the difference. So I have it written up on the board here, the difference between stretching and then active loaded movement, as I like to call it. So what does that even mean? So the different common forms of stretching that people do: static stretching, dynamic stretching, long, now I'm gonna forget the name of it.
Light loaded.
Low loaded, long duration stretching, PNF stretching, and then bandage stretching. So when do you use each? Well, static stretching is what you grew up with traditionally. It's the, just touch your toes, the very simple things. The low load, long duration stretches are what we typically use a lot in physical therapy. That's the methodology that we like to use, especially when you get a really, really sticky joint that's just not moving. So, for example, I've had shoulder surgery. Sean Rigsby's has had shoulder surgery, and low load, long duration stretches are just absolutely perfect and ideal and dynamic for that specific case. You're hearing a lot in general medical and fitness related media about active loaded movements. What does that even mean? So you'll see them where they actually take and going into motions to gain motions as opposed to traditional stretching. So some of the ways that I like to do that are through windmills, which is a kettlebell movement that we've done in videos past. I like to explain RDLs, and then squatting. For people that have really tight hips, put a heavy bar on their back and squat all the way down is a great way to open up your hips, loosen up your ankles, stretch everything out. Okay, so we're going to come here. I actually have Ashley here today. We're going to go through a couple of the different movements and some different things to do to help you. First, before we get into it, the most common questions I get: how much do I stretch, and when do I stretch? So how much do you stretch depends on which type of stretch you decide to use. So if you're doing a low load, long duration stretch, you're going to do that 5 to 10. I've even had people do stretches for 30 minutes. It's not fun. Typically, especially if I have a really sticky elbow, I will put people there forever and just leave it there. They'll have to move every once in a while. They'll have to take breaks, but we will accumulate 20 to 30 minutes in one session. All right. PNF stretching, Kelly Starrett's kind of made that famous in the CrossFit world with a lot of the stuff he does. He always talks about adding in PNF stretching when you've done some of the bandage stretches that he talks about, where we have listed here. Which, what is the bandage stretch? It's literally just using a band to stabilize the joint better to allow more specific movement. Okay, it doesn't do anything fancy other than give you further stabilization. It like gives you another set of hands, which makes it really good when you're trying to stretch. So when I'm doing these other stretches, PNF stretching, you're doing it on a time. So you'll typically activate the muscle for 10 to 15 seconds and then stretch again and things like that. We'll go over that here in a second. And then the bandage stretches, 2 to 3 to 5 minutes. Research shows when you do a static stretch, 60 seconds is ideal. A lot of times I make people hold it longer. It really just kind of depends on what we're trying to do. So when in doubt, just go longer. Use it as meditation time and just kind of get into it. When it comes into the active loaded movements, which actually uses weight to push you into new movement so that you actually gain strength as you gain motion, you're not going to be able to hold those for a long period of time because you're loading the joint, right? So by loading the joint into new motion, 1 to 2 seconds, 3 seconds, you can do longer than that if you want, if you can tolerate it. It all really depends on your strength and how much you can handle, okay? So let's go ahead and do some examples here, all right? We've got people squatting and deadlifting and all that stuff around here, so we'll just kind of work around them. All right, so we have Ashley Nidifer here. She's actually getting her master's in athletic training, is doing her internship with me at GSO CrossFit and Calso Physical Therapy. So I figured she's the perfect person to demonstrate all this. All right, so we're gonna go through some of these stretches and what do they mean. So today we're gonna go over first RDLs, okay? So go ahead and pick that up. Come out of the rig whenever you, when you pick that up. So with this, our goal is to stretch the hamstring. So if you have a really tight hamstring, like you have a really bad butt wink, it comes very early, or when you have the first pull in a snatch or clean, and you do that, sometimes it could be hamstring. If you have a real hard time getting into it, that could be coming from hamstring. So this is a great way to stretch it out. So she keeps her back perfectly straight. She gets into it. You see her shaking already. It's stretching. You feel the stretch there? Good. She does feel a stretch there. Come back up. You'll do 8 to 10. The number doesn't really matter. So when I'm working with patients, just keep going. So when I work with patients, I typically never say a number because I don't really care. You see the quality of the movement. You see what it looks like. You see the effort. When that breaks down, it's time to take a break and then move on to something else. I want quality reps. I don't really care about duration, and I don't really care about hitting a preset number. I don't care. You got it? All right. So that would be an active loaded stretch. Another example of that, if we want something to open up our thoracic spine and shoulders, is a windmill. So she's going to come here. But she'd actually never done one of these before, which blows my mind. So as much as you've been around me lately. All right, hand inside the knee, reach up, rotate up. That's going to open up your thoracic spine, open up your shoulder through load, right? So we're loading the joint, we're putting it into new motion, and we're teaching it a new movement pattern. You see she's shaking doing that too. That's awesome. That's what we want. The big thing with her is we want to gain stability, so we need to be having you do these.
Okay.
All right, so the next we're going to do, we're talking about bandage stretches. So what are they and what's the purpose of them, right? The band is literally going to be another set of hands, so you put as far into the joint as you can.
Far under, like higher?
Yep,
Lower?
higher. Yep, and then just go into an RDL basically. So you could do an RDL, you can do it loaded with a bar and get into it. And this is basically another set of hands just holding that femur as stable as possible, okay? And then you would come up, and this is a lot of the Kelly Starrett stuff. Maybe you go into pigeon pose, maybe you go into a bunch of different stretches with this. I mean, any which way you can make it work. But this is how we would use it for specific to hamstrings. So let's come over here. Let's talk about a low load, long duration stretch. So we're going to do this one with external rotation. So basically you just lay down and get your shoulder further on. This is one of the key things for people who really struggle with a front rack, or you struggle with your jerk position, or you struggle with overhead position. Most people lack external rotation. So make sure your shoulder's all the way on. You could even get on even more. Scoot over. There you go. Really all you want is the elbow out, because when you lose stability here, you're only going to feel it there, because that's where the stress is. This joint is not as strong as this joint. So you always want to try to stabilize this as much as you can, take pressure off that, and then just let it stretch. Most people who do that will be stuck right here. This is 2 pounds, okay? That's literally all it takes. And you just sit there 5, 10, 15 minutes, however much you have time for, however much you can tolerate, and just let it go. That is a low load, long duration with really sticky joints that don't want to do anything. This is the only thing that works. You know, I know a lot of people go against it, they talk bad about it, but there's a purpose to everything, right? There's been research, we know that this works in rehab, so why wouldn't it work in a gym or CrossFit or Olympic weightlifting or powerlifting setting, right? So those are a couple things that we like to do. In our box at GSO CrossFit, we finish everything with this. Whenever it comes to a lot of our MASH weightlifters, all of our professional weightlifters, I will make them do the active loaded stretches prior to lifting. So they're not actually stretching, it actually becomes a dynamic warm-up. And then when it comes to the static, low load, long duration, those type of stretches, they do that at the end. The muscles and everything are warm, the body is primed for stretching. That's the time you do the basic stretches that you did as a kid growing up, all right? I never like to start out with static stretching or basic stretching before a workout. It'll make you weaker. There's more and more research coming out about that. All right, if you guys have any other questions, contact us, email us, message us. We'll see you later.
Hey guys, now do me a favor. Go subscribe to our channel, like our videos, comment. I promise you if you comment, I'll get back to you and answer all your questions. Thanks for watching.